The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
The Rita Cosby Show
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak, in for the great Rita Cosby. I hope she's relaxing. I just can't even picture her relaxing. She's always working. And when I mean that, she's always preparing. She is a very, very hardworking host here. And I hope all of those of you listening who usually listen to Rita appreciate the hard work. And if you don't, you should. I can't even imagine you relaxing right now, Rita, if you're listening. But please be relaxing. I hope you are. Again, I'm Jake Novak filling in for Rita tonight. Like to take some of your calls, 800-848-9222. But before we do that, I want to get you updated on another interesting story that we've seen a tremendous difference in the way that it's been covered depending on the news outlet, and it's really shameful. This is the very strong evidence of malicious vandalism of the reflecting pool, the Lincoln Memorial. There's videos of citizen journalists. There's testimony from Parks Department folks who are career folks. They're not Trump people, of just absolutely showing that without a doubt there have been people who had been deliberately vandalizing the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial. Well, today, one of them found out the hard way that you just can't do that. And, this was Jeanine Pirro explaining. Here she is, the U.S. Attorney for D.C.
So, today a grand jury has returned a felony indictment against a defendant, David Hearn, for felony destruction of property, for which he faces 10 years in prison. The indictment is in response to an incident that occurred on June 19th of 2026, in which the defendant Hearn ripped a piece of recently installed sealant on the bottom of the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial. The evidence shows, and we will prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that Hearn willfully destroyed property at the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool.
Now, if you've been listening to the mainstream news media on this developing story, not just this particular guy, but all the others, they all talk about it like it's some kind of rumor. It's not really true. There's no evidence of it. I mean, there are people from the Parks Department, again, career Parks Department people. These are not Trump people, who say the guy went in there and viciously started ripping it off. By the way, I've been to the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial many times. I've lived in a lot of places, D.C. one of them. It never occurred to me to put my hand in it, let alone walk in the darn thing. I mean, or reach into it. What a weirdo. And, something needs to be done so that other people don't do this, and need to understand that you're going to go to jail for a long time because it's not worth it. Whatever anti-Trump statement you want to make, and maybe be cool on social media for 5 minutes, is not worth 10 years in prison, dude. And he's claiming, I didn't do anything. I just put my hand on it, and all of a sudden the cuffs were on me. Yeah, I mean, it's just not credible. And now he's been indicted, so, he's got a long fight ahead. I guess he'll get a GoFundMe or something like that. But honestly, this is just... This is so, we've had a lot of problems and eras in this country, including during our bicentennial year. 1976 was just in the shadow of Watergate. President Nixon had resigned less than 2 years before the 76 bicentennial of July of 76. He resigned in August of 74. There were still a lot of wounds from the Vietnam War and the division in that country that war created. So it wasn't all happy times. And I can tell you that the vast majority of the American people were not really happy with the choices they had for president that year in 76. President Ford and Jimmy Carter. They didn't have tremendous popularity. Neither one of them did. So it's not like everything was super happy then, but I really believe that this country properly marked the bicentennial. We are not doing it this year because of deliberate malcontents, the change in the culture in this country to one even more bitter than what we had in 1976. And I'll tell you why. A couple of reasons why 76, despite all those problems I just described, it was done better. One is you still had a significant amount of this population that had fought in World War II, people who had sacrificed everything for this country. They, at that point, weren't so old. They were in their 50s, a lot of those people at that time, or some of them even in their late 40s. So they were mostly in their 50s, though. And that's one thing. Second is, if you knew the culture of the country at the time, after the Vietnam War protests of the late 60s, early 70s, after the Watergate stuff, the country was kind of medicated at that time. How do I say it? And I don't mean only literally, although literally it was. You take a look at trends in America based on what kind of illicit drug use is most common. And in the 60s, there was a lot of amphetamines, uppers. And by 1976, barbiturates are a big deal. So the country was a little bit mellow, for lack of a better term. And that allowed for a little less kind of stuff like we saw at the reflecting pool in this whole story. A little bit less agitation. Not for the right reasons. For the people who were that way because they weren't medicated, it was for the right reason. They just wanted to chill for a while, which is not a bad thing to do in your life once in a while, especially if you're watching too much of the mainstream news media, or again, even a lot of the right-wing news media. It's riling you up. Figure out what your news is and go with that. But this is important stuff to remember. We have Tom in New Jersey. Tom, you want to talk about the reflecting pool thing?
Yeah,
Did we lose you? Did he cut himself off?
No, I'm still here.
I hear you now. Go ahead, Dad. Start again.
Okay. It's really a good thing that you got these reflecting pool felons, and they should pay. But you see, the thing is, we have the criminals that are killing and raping and coming in and out of jail. But you see, that's not important. but we fixed the reflecting pool problem when we got them.
Listen, I hear you.
That's what counts. That's what counts. But all the people that are killed and raped in and out of jail, that's okay. You can let them wander all around. It's all right. Let them do what they want. But we got the reflecting pool taken care of. That is the most important thing, isn't it?
I definitely hear your point.
Isn't it?
No, I definitely hear your point. But what I think you need to understand is that the people who are trying to get these murderers and rapists locked up and pushing back on the...
it's never going to happen.
But hold on. You got to let me finish.
It's never going to happen.
One
this
second.
country is tainted. We're finished.
Well, hold on 1 second. The people who made that arrest and got that grand jury seated to get this guy punished are also the people trying much harder and much more regularly to push back on this lenience, let them all out of jail, no cash bail kind of thing. Okay, so if this were the Democrats who had gone after somebody like this, then your point would be a little bit better focused. Jeannie Pirro has been going after, for example, the guy who shot the two people from the Israeli embassy. She's been going after serious crimes. In addition to this, which I think is also a serious crime, but I get your point. Listen, I want to get the murderers too. And by the way, and I hope you've seen the statistics on this. In every major city, a huge percentage of the crimes are committed by fewer than 10 or 12 people in every city. It's incredible. It's incredible how easy it would be to make a huge dent in the murders and the crimes, but the cities are pushing back on it. They are using crime and criminals as a way to make political protest, to bring the general public to a heel, to really wield their power in a negative way. So, listen, I get the point. Obviously, the vandalism of the reflecting pool isn't our biggest problem in this country. Of course it isn't. I get that. But if the people indicting him were also the people letting the folks out of jail for violent crime, then that would be more of an outrage. This does need to be dealt with, however, for a number of reasons. And people need to understand that if you're going to use this kind of vandalism to protest a president, it's not appropriate. All right. Teddy and Yonkers, you want to talk about criticism, I think, from both sides.
Yes, sir. Jake, this is the first time. I've listened to you before when you subbed for other people. You're very intelligent. You're articulate. And I agree with you on many, many things. I used to be a Democrat, but since the Democrat socialists are taking over this party with their anti-Semitism and their anti-Zionism, and they say that it's being anti-Zionist doesn't mean anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. It's a lot of malarkey. I could use something else, but I don't want to do that. And you know where I'm coming from, Jake.
Yeah.
But, Jake, I'm also even-handed. I give Trump a D on the Iran war. One day on, one day off. One day on, one day off. One day on, one day off. And you know where I'm coming from. And I hear many hosts on the radio show say the same thing. But why don't they criticize him vehemently like they do the Democrats? And justifiably so. But you're being a hypocrite when you don't say, Trump, get off your ass. Okay?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons why. There's a couple of reasons why I'm approaching it a little bit differently. One being that this is still a very fluid situation. And I have to say, if I don't disagree with you. I've been disappointed with the handling of the Iran war just in the last few weeks. Up until then, I was very happy with it. I think it made a huge dent in the regime. And now it's this sudden pause button, which I think is not working for me. But another huge part that was really bothering me was it seemed like Israel was being made to kneel to Hezbollah. And I'm glad I didn't go too negative on that, because what's happened in the last few days, I started this program talking about how good news or positive news, and to a lot of people this wouldn't be positive news, but for me it is not being covered enough. What Marco Rubio did with that Lebanese peace deal is absolutely worthy of, I don't know what kind of an award, something smarter than the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, it's the strategic award of the year. Rubio took a look at that memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran and noticed that the Hezbollah aspect of it wasn't written as, Israel has to lay off Hezbollah. It was written as Israel can't make attacks on Lebanon. It's up to Lebanon to have their sovereignty. And Rubio took that as a major opportunity. He rushed through. He got the Lebanese and the Israelis to sit down again in D.C. and got them to sign a deal that included Lebanon, the sovereign government of Lebanon, allowing for Israel to continue to have a presence in Lebanon. Now, that doesn't erase all the issues that I have with our direct dealings with the actual mainland country of Iran. But understand this. If Hezbollah goes down, and they took a huge hit on Monday, the Israelis destroyed a massive underground tunnel with a lot of their launchers and missiles, and they're going to do more. I can tell you that right now. When Hezbollah ceases to exist, this regime will cease to exist, because they really don't know how to do anything else. Now, I understand your criticism of the way that there's been a start and stop here with this regime, and they're getting money again, which we know is not going to be used for anything good, although the money they're coming in now is not even stopping the bleeding. They're still net losing a lot of money every day, so I'm not going to raise an alarm. But I'll say one last thing about this. President Trump, and this is something that I really do say objectively, because by the way, I have no personal affinity for any politician. You know why? Because I really don't know any of the. I've never been friends with the president, never known any presidents. So this isn't about being a fanboy here, but this is an objective statement. I believe that President Trump has earned a tremendous amount of personal capital with those of us who support Israel and those of us who oppose Iran. Whether it's Operation Midnight Hammer, whether it has been the intelligence sharing with Israel, whether it's been other things with Israel like the Golan Heights annexation or the embassy in Jerusalem. I'm willing to give. I'll admit this, and this is an open admission. If this is an admission of weakness in your eyes, then that's fine. At least I'm being honest. I'm willing to give him a lot more slack, because records and actions mean more than words to me, and I think he has earned a little bit more slack here. Although I still criticize, and I agree with you. Don't like the way the war has gone the last few weeks, or these negotiations have gone the last few weeks. But I'm going to give him a little bit more slack on this, because he's had a lot of years and a lot of actions to earn it. All right, we'll be right back with more. I got a great guest coming up in the next couple of minutes, and we'll talk more about all these issues.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Marine Toys for Tots foster care program is bringing hope to children who need it most. Every 2 minutes, a child enters foster care, often with only a small bag of belongings. More than 400,000 children face trauma and uncertainty, many before age 8. This May, during Foster Care Awareness Month, Toys for Tots is creating Room for Joy. In 2025, nearly 375,000 children received comfort through toys, books, and essentials, reminding them they are not alone. Donate now and change a child's life.
This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for, I guess, the vacationing Rita Cosby. I just can't imagine her taking a break. She's always working so hard. And we're taking your calls as well, 800-848-9222, although we do have a great guest from the great state of Oklahoma joining us in a few minutes. Got a couple more minutes, though, before we do that, and we were just talking about Iran. I know everyone's talking about the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce wedding. That's apparently the big social event of the weekend, but no, the event I'm really interested in is the funeral, the long-delayed funeral for the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. They're finally going to have his funeral on Saturday in Iran. 15 to 16 million people expected to come out on the streets, and Iran has warned the United States and Israel not to try to attack or take out their leaders when they finally come out of hiding for this big funeral, apparently. First off, I am old enough to remember the funeral for his predecessor, the Ayatollah Khamenei. If you remember that funeral and what happened, they were carrying his coffin like body surfing. They were carrying it through, and inevitably the body fell out at one point. They were so the crowd was so unruly. I wonder if that'll happen again. Also, I just want to say preemptively, if the United States or Israel decides to go after the people who are going to this funeral, good for them. Ali Khamenei is possibly one of the greatest mass murderers in the history of the world. He turned Iran, which already was a terror state when he took over in 1989, into a terror machine all over the world. He is responsible for many, many innocent lives, including hundreds, really thousands of American lives. There is no respect due to the man whatsoever. And I don't want to hear anybody saying, well, have a respect for the dead. No. Not for a murderer. So if the U.S. and the United States and Israel decide to go after some of these people who might show up for the first time since the beginning of the war, fine with me. I don't think they will, but fine with me. That's how that goes. Speaking of taking out Iranian leaders, though, real quick, the Washington Post has a really, I think, one of those laughable headlines where they think they've got this big scoop. You can check it out on their website if you want to. Big exclusive that they say the United States was so worried that the Israelis were going to take out top Iranian leaders, including the Speaker of the Parliament, that they warned them about it during negotiations. No, that isn't the United States turning on Israel. That's called good cop, bad cop. Hey, listen, my partner's outside is really steaming right now. You don't give us the names of those guys in that drug shipment. I don't know what he's going to do to you. That's what that was. But the people of the Washington Post just haven't seen enough cop movies. We'll be right back.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Rita Cosby is on.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for the great Rita Cosby tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Joining us right now is former Oklahoma schools chief, and I mean K through college, Ryan Walters. And Ryan, we were talking in the last hour about this 250th anniversary. Here we are on this incredible occasion. I'm so lucky to have been alive and remember really well the Bicentennial celebrations of 1976. Now we're at 250, and so much of what I think has been the letting of the air out of the tire on what should be a more euphoric weekend for America is the fault of the schools. You know this better than anyone. We are not giving people, the full picture of what to be proud of in this country. I really wish this were a bigger celebration nationwide. I'm sure it is in Oklahoma, but not enough, and speak to some of that, Ryan, because to me, we've really shortchanged our kids on a heck of a party.
No, I completely agree. And, this was done intentionally so. You've seen the teachers' unions, these radical left organizers at it for years to undermine America, by undermine American education. And it began decades ago when you began to see an absence of talk and study around the founding, around primary source documents of, you got away from reading the Constitution, reading the Federalist Papers. You began to see an absence of that in schools. And then over time, you saw it replaced with the opposite of an undermining of American exceptionalism, of critical race theory, of DEI, of America's an evil racist place, of, you should, not only should you not admire George Washington, you should despise him. You should hate these individuals that forged our country. And so now you get to a point where those people are adults. And so much of, what we're trying to do is get education back on track. I so appreciate the Trump administration getting rid of the Department of Ed and really tackling this issue. But we've got to continue that fight, and we must, for the future of America. But also, we have a large segment of our adult population that don't believe America was exceptional, that don't believe in American values and American principles, and frankly believe that America has been on a wrong path throughout its nation's history. And so you have a moment like this where, I tend to be glass half full, where I'm looking at it going, hey, look, I'm glad people are reflecting and looking back. But you are right, Jake, that so many don't view America in that way and don't have this, ability to look at this as just a truly exceptional celebration of the greatest country in the history of the world.
Ryan, we're speaking with Ryan Walters, former schools chief in Oklahoma. It isn't just an attack on America. Look, pointing out the low points in our history is something I'm certainly not against. I just did it myself on a program a couple weeks ago. I did an entire half hour on the Dred Scott decision, which is the worst, not only in its morality, but in its actual legal workings, the worst decision in Supreme Court history. It's not about looking at everything with rose-colored glasses, but it is about. But if you leave out the big picture, it's a huge problem. But it's not just against the United States; it's an attack on all of Western civilization. There have been some states now that they have mandated study of the Bible in school. As in an academic sense, they're not going to have prayer sessions. It's going to be studying the Bible. And for people who are, their heads are blowing up about this, all I can say to you is good luck understanding art for the last 700 years if you don't know the Bible. Good luck understanding other literature. Good luck understanding Shakespeare. Lots of luck. Because the Bible is, this incredible, if you don't believe it as a religious document, fine, that's your right. It's an important narrative piece of Western civilization. It's a huge, huge part of it. I mean, this is an attack on not just the United States. It's an attack on, I think, actually valuable education. It's turning it into political indoctrination, which is a great way to make people stupid. I mean, there's no other way to say it, Ryan.
No, that's exactly right. We were proud to bring the Bible back to our classrooms in Oklahoma and our curriculum, and it was exciting to see Texas do the same thing because, frankly, here's what the left's been able to do. If you unmoor education from truth and from the plumb line of understanding it from its basic principles, you can teach whatever, you can say whatever you want. I mean, you can convince anybody of anything. America is evil, racist, and all these things. if you don't have it tied to some of the valuable underpinnings of where it came from. And the reality is you don't have to be a Christian or a Jewish American or someone that practices any of those faiths to say, throughout American history, the Bible had an incredible influence. I mean, just read the writings of Washington or Franklin, of John Adams. Read what they say about religion. See what they say about Christianity and about its significance. Read nearly every presidential speech throughout American history and see references to the Bible. To your point, literature, art, how can you pick these things up? It was funny, I was just talking to my daughter the other day about East of Eden from John Steinbeck. It's like, can you imagine, reading Eden, what are they talking about East of Eden? I mean, it's just, you would be an ignorant person if you didn't have any understanding of the Bible, because you couldn't understand literature, you couldn't understand art, you couldn't understand just so much of the basics of our society. But that's what they want, because without that, they have a blank canvas to convince our students of whatever left-wing ideology they want, and that's what they've been doing.
Well, and, there is a guy in Israel who probably grew up getting sick of all the biblical references growing up. His name is Professor Yuval Harari, who literally wants to write a secular Bible, which doesn't surprise me because, first of all, I think he's just, listen, you grow up in Israel, or even if you're a tourist there, I get it. At every place you go, this Bible story happened, that Bible story happened. So maybe he's sick of it because of that. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I wouldn't know, and he's certainly not my patient. But I can tell you that this is definitely a huge stumbling block for them. I mean, I think there was one of the, every other movie out of Hollywood for like 10 years ago was a dystopian movie, 10, 15 years ago. But wasn't there one called The Book of Eli, where the whole thing is about, like, in a dystopian world, they find one copy of the Bible and it becomes so precious? That's, by the way, that's the story of the Jewish people for a long time. I mean, they found, for example, the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947, 2,000-year-old parchment scrolls in the Bible. And then they compared them to the parchment scrolls that were in synagogues, today. And there's like 3 letters difference. I mean, the amount of care, having computers and carbon copies, the amount of care and devotion to every letter that entailed over 2,000 years and over 50, 60 countries all over the world, it's pretty impressive. And if people are like that about the Bible and the New Testament as well, there's something to this, and you're making yourself ignorant. You're right. You're incredible ignoramus if you don't know some of the basic biblical narratives. I mean, you really, I don't understand how you can understand art. I don't understand how you can understand so many other references in art. And that is really what a lot of this has to do. They're trying to create a whole blank new slate. That to me is really what's going on here.
And that's a rejection not only of the Christian views of so many throughout American history, but it's a rejection of just the fundamental way the founders viewed their role in the founding of America. They looked to history. They looked to their faith. They believed and understood that it wasn't going to be just, writing something from scratch, that they had to learn from history. They had to learn from the previous mistakes of other civilizations, and they believed that the country and the nation and the way that it was founded had to be tied to truth, which they believed came from God. And so what you see here is such what the left does, which is actually a rejection of true wisdom, a rejection of truth, a rejection of principle, and to rewrite things in a very Marxist fashion, that the world begins today, that knowledge begins with them, and it is truly ignorant and arrogant. And what you see, though, is when you press that upon young people, you get people like the mayor of New York City who get elected with these ideas that they pitch as these new unique items and ways of viewing things, and you go, there's nothing new about that. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. These ideas have been tried again and again, and so often, frankly, in modern history, you study communism, Marxism, socialism, and it just makes you sick to your stomach my goodness, how many times are different people going to try the same policies that have been proven to be such a detriment to all peoples underneath them. But, when you have this absence of history, when you have this type of indoctrination, when you have this type of arrogant view, it's easy to get people to buy into that and do those things. And again, we're seeing history repeat itself, unfortunately, in New York and across our country. And, I do hope that as we're coming on the 250th anniversary, that you have people that if you just go to the founding documents, if you just a cursory study will lead you to the understanding that the founders took their faith incredibly seriously. By the way, they not only in the founding era did they cite the Bible more than any other book, they cited the book of Deuteronomy more than any other book in the founding era by our founding fathers. This was heavily cited. It was heavily referenced. That's where they went, and I hope people rediscover the Christian roots of American history.
Yeah, it's important. We're talking to Ryan Walters from Oklahoma, so let's shift gears a little bit here because our listeners should really know a little bit about what's going on the ground in other parts of the country other than New York and D.C. And, Oklahoma, oil and gas, such a huge part of the economy there. Love to hear what it's been like, this roller coaster the last couple of months of oil and gas prices shooting up higher and now coming down fast. I get the feeling, if I had a guess, the people in Oklahoma knew that this would be like this. In other words, they knew the volatility. I think they were speaking of Joseph, thinking of the Bible, I think they were being more like the biblical Joseph and knowing that this was a couple of months of fat years and they were going to get some lower prices pretty fast after that. Is that the way Oklahoma looked at this?
Yeah, exactly. There's no Oklahoman that's surprised by that at all. I mean, this is the oil and gas market as we know it. You understand the volatility of it, and you understand that it powers so much of the world today. Not only, us as Americans, but it powers the world. And, hey, we are drill baby drill country. We understand. We want America to be as energy independent as possible by continuing to, extract oil and natural gas. And we understand that what the market does with those things. And so no surprises here when it comes to that. We want to continue to see America take an approach that the Trump administration has when it comes to oil and gas. And we want to continue to see the Democrats, stay out of the way and stop trying to undermine that industry. And also we want to continue to see the Trump administration have an America first policy when it comes to foreign policy and continue to exert our strength throughout the world. So there's no Oklahomans that are going, well, I can't believe there's some volatility in the oil and gas market. That is a yearly thing here.
Yeah. I just hope that they invested wisely with that windfall profit that came in those last couple of months, and do even more R&D and get even better at what they do. It's very important. We talk about the breadbasket of this country. We talk about the fuel centers of this country, and getting back to the founders. This was a huge part of their very wise undertaking of things like the Electoral College. That was the whole point. The idea that the farm states, this is before petroleum, but I think it's the same ideal there, that they would be more sparsely populated. They wouldn't have big cities, but if they didn't have an equal seat at the table, the country would starve. And I think in this case, the country will run out of fuel as well. Ryan, hope you'll stay on the line with us because I got to do a quick shout out to our first responders, and then we're going to go to a break. But I want to do this first. This is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Support Our Heroes segment. And
the Rita Cosby Show presents Support Our Heroes.
Our heroes need good spokespeople, and while we've heard a lot, and I even talked about it earlier in the program about the defunding the cop situation and the decision by Mayor Mamdani to change his mind about adding headcount, don't forget that we also have issues and needs for more firefighters. And New York State Assemblyman Michael Tannousis, he is a Republican from Staten Island. He's a state assemblyman. He is making a big a statement in Albany, in the state capital of Albany, about how the New York City passed this huge budget and there wasn't anything to add to headcount for the FDNY either. So shout out to New York State Assemblyman Michael Tannousis for speaking out. We also need more firefighters. There's been a big call for more firefighters on each engine. And really, this is where the priority should be. Oh, listen, all it takes is $11 a month. Donate $11 a month to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to a new era of baseball's great spectacle. The T-Mobile Home Run Derby, live on Netflix. The biggest sluggers in baseball put their talents to the test on All-Star Weekend. Raw power meets star power. Big swagger meets bigger slams. And you don't swing to make contact. You swing to make history. Watch the T-Mobile Home Run Derby live on Netflix, Monday, July 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for Rita Cosby in our home stretch right now. We've been joined for this whole half hour by Ryan Walters, the former schools chief of Oklahoma. Ryan, what is your outlook on the midterms, and what about the future of Oklahoma politics? There's some turnover going on in that state. So give me your national picture and then tell me about Oklahoma.
With the national picture, I hope folks get out and mobilize to vote. I know the teachers' unions are dumping, hundreds of millions of dollars into elections across the country. You've seen some bellwether areas and seen the influence that they have there. But look, I think that people look across the scene and they see what the Trump administration has done with law and order. I think they look and see what the economy has done under President Trump. I think they see a safer America and a safer world because of the Trump administration. And so, look, I hope folks get out to vote. I hope they mobilize. I hope that they're able to understand that the left, is going to use any mechanism possible to influence these elections, and they are, through the labor unions and other entities that they've got in place. They've got quite a political machine, and so, look, I'm optimistic. I think it's one of those things where you continue to see the left build out these operations, these political machines, and it's so important for, hardworking men and women across the country to exercise their rights and get out. And then, you've got some major elections in red states all over the country. You've got some major gubernatorial elections all over the country as well that, I think it's always so significant. You talk about federal elections, but you look at state elections and, I always go, hey, red states have to act like red states. It's time for red states to truly be the beacons of what conservative policy can look like. So, I look at a lot of, the Republican primaries across the country and some of these gubernatorial races, and, these are significant decisions that can be the difference between, a handful of red states really showing the country how positive conservative policies work. You look at Florida, look what Ron DeSantis has done for the national scene because of leading from conservative policies in Florida, and what a difference it's made for the whole country. I think you've got opportunities like that across the country, and I hope that we see those folks in those governor's offices.
Yeah, it's so important, whatever people feel about DeSantis and his presidential aspirations, and whether your people are angry about what you just can't take away the way that he's made sure that improving Florida, making it more attractive every single day, how successful he's been at that. Now we need to see, and there's been plenty of other Republican governors who've done that in other states, but now we need to see more of that. And you can't just, to me, for example, Ryan Walters, the decision by the Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago to negate race as a criteria to make congressional districts is potentially, to me, the most liberating thing that could happen for black people in this country since the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and maybe even in the long run, even more, just as impactful, the most impactful thing, not just as impactful as the Emancipation Proclamation, because millions of black people, because 90% of black people live in these feudal districts, are a foregone conclusion. No one has to do a good job for them. They're going to get elected anyway. They don't care. And now millions of black people are suddenly, if the redistricting happens soon enough, will suddenly become swing voters. That's what you want to be in America. You want to be a swing voter, but you can't be a swing voter, Ryan, if you don't go out and vote.
That's exactly right. elections are significant when you've got people that are mobilized, you've got competition, you've got people that if they're an incumbent, hey, there's a real accountability because, hey, we might lose if we don't convince people to give us another shot. Or if you're new on the scene, hey, our ideas better win. We better, convince people of the job that we'll do, or we'll never make it in office. When it's a foregone conclusion, those pressure points and accountability mechanisms aren't there. So guess what? They're going to be much more selfish. They're going to be less answerable to the people, and that's a major problem.
All right, Ryan Walters from Oklahoma, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for letting me fill in for Rita this evening. I'll be back tomorrow night filling in for Rita. 2 whole nights off. I don't know if she's going to be able to handle it.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?